It is Tuesday. That means it is Dynasty Points, and our team, Jacob Sanderson, Lucas Gilbert, Ryan Heath, are going to bring you 4 different perspectives on different Dynasty topics like we do every single week. This week is no different. Tonight, we sit down and discuss whether or not contract extensions should move the needle or not. Sit tight, sit back, get ready to tilt, and enjoy tonight's Dynasty Points.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Yes, as I said, it's Tuesday night, which can only mean one thing. You are here locked into Dynasty Points because you are a sharp and smart Dynasty player. Remember, if you haven't already, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button, leave a comment on this video. There are links below to another video when this is done. Feel free to just hit that, leave a comment on that video, so on and so forth. It helps us a lot. We have some news for once, but not player-related news. It's just team member news. See, Ryan Heath has been on this show so much this last year. We just decided to make it official. Ryan Heath is now a full-time member of Dynasty Points. We have added the 4th member of the team. So shout out to Ryan. Welcome to the Thunderdome officially. And then, of course, if you haven't noticed over on the Bird app, the Dynasty Points Twitter handle or the Full Tilt Twitter handle has changed. It is now been rebranded to Dynasty PTS. Everything left over from what you would normally see on Dynasty Points will be headed over to that. So if you are on X, you want to be following at Dynasty PTS. With that being said, I am your host with most time on his hands. I am Thomas Tipple. You can find me at El Nostra Thomas. My fun fact today is a pretty good one, in my opinion. In my opinion, there was one show when I was wrestling in this fine country of Canada when a man named Steve Carino once kicked me in the face, and once he was done kicking me in the face, as he was pinning me for the 3 count, he told me how good and how much better the Philadelphia Phillies were than the Toronto Blue Jays before the referee's hand hit 3. So shout out Steve Carino and his love for the Phillies and kicking me in the face.
I'm Jacob. My fun fact today, of course, is that Jason Christopher Tatum has become the 5th player in NBA history to lead his team into the finals, averaging over 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. By the time that we come back to you in your lives again next Tuesday, your Boston Celtics will be leading in the NBA Finals. What a great time for us all to be alive.
And we were getting NBA.
So I'm going to keep up with the sports theme, but slightly different. I'm Lucas Gilbert. You can find me on X at GilbertFF. And your Tennessee Volunteer college baseball team is the only team over the last 4 seasons to both average 50 wins a season and go to the super regionals each and every year.
Wow.
Anyone in the chat, by the way, who's talking about Luka, anyone who wants VIG free action, at Jacob Sanderson on Twitter, hop into my DMs. If we want to just take the Vegas line and pick out the VIG, more than welcome to get that action down.
Oh, and Ryan,
and I'm muted. Yep,
there you go.
We go.
Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me. Ryan Heath on Twitter at RyanJ_Heath. My fun fact is I'm excited to watch this Celtics team in the finals, but I have this friend who always believes that if I'm watching a Celtics playoff game and they're losing, it's my fault. This has gone back probably 5 or 6 years to when we were in college. Literally, I would not even be watching a game and I would get a text from him like, hey, shut the TV off. What are you doing? Like, unhinged behavior. I have been a very casual NBA fan the last couple of years. I will be watching the finals. I will probably be getting a text from my friend.
Yeah, if they're losing at halftime in the first game you watch, it's time to touch some grass, buddy.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to do what's best for the team.
Yeah, Jacob
Mystic,
will be
like I
messaging
said,
me too.
DMs are open, Mystic. Feel free.
The no time ever on Jacob's feed probably loses him more followers on a yearly basis than NBA finals time when the Celtics are involved. People want all your football takes and you just go, no, and it's all Celtics.
You're not
all
getting
the
them.
time.
You're not getting my football takes. You'll get my football takes in 4 to 7 games.
Brian Ford says Wick's first down per route run over Luca's. So I mean we're thriving already in the chat. Tonight, as I mentioned, kind of an interesting topic. We don't do a lot of strategy conversation on the program. We do a lot of player specific, a lot of player analysis type, but per a lot of listeners and subscribers' requests, we are going to get into something that I think is personally misused in terms of a dynasty strategy. Jacob likes to say that I'm just an old man yelling at clouds and these things don't actually matter and I'm fabricating it. I mean, we have already had Ryan Heath tell me that I'm making up.
No, this is what you do. You go into the farm and you grab the big bale of hay and you collect your straw and you make it into a Nico Collins shaped man. That's what you do. That's what you did last week. I couldn't be there. I was working all week on an expedited hearing at my dumb, annoying legal job that doesn't let me talk football and battle your scarecrows. But you were like just like Cillian Murphy in Batman Begins. You were out there. You're a straw man.
Wow, that was Scarecrow, not straw man. But thanks for that.
Same thing. Scarecrows are straw men. All scarecrows are straw men, but not all straw men are scarecrows. Something like that.
Oh my God. Well, when we come back from the first break, we're going to get into why Jacob thinks my ideals are fraudulent and why I think this is a misused tactic for most dynasty players. So sit back, relax, and we'll be right back after this break. Okay. I've seen this a lot. And now even with the McCaffrey news, which we're not going to open with, there are no running backs that I selected for this example because shocker, not a lot of running backs signed extensions where we picked this data from because it just doesn't happen. The man is a unicorn. I mean, Christian McCaffrey just is. So we'll wrap this conversation up with Christian McCaffrey. We do have another game. People loved the last one with Debro so much. We brought it back. We have a new one courtesy of Jacob, and we're going to wrap it up with Discord questions, of course. But let's talk about a misused dynasty strategy. Some people are very good at capitalizing on information. I think a lot of the time when we see news like this in most of your leagues, the person with these players will put that player on the block right away. I mean, it's pretty much anytime news happens dynasty wise, that player's on the block right away. And I always tend to believe that you should be early. You should be kind of looking for these things to happen. And I do believe that there is an upcharge charged when an extension like this happens because people believe that it gives them some safety, it gives them some longevity, or that it means their production is going to significantly increase. When really, a lot of times their situations don't necessarily change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each person on the panel how they approach this. Does it matter to them at all? How do they navigate it in trade conversations? So let's talk building your roster in leagues that already exist in terms of these extensions. I'll kick it off with Jacob, who wasn't here to pull the straw from my straw man last week.
I think that it really depends on the player, which is a boring answer, but I think it really does. At running back, I think it is more important, certainly than a wide receiver. Alvin Kamara is an example that jumps out, where if he had not gotten extended when he did, and if they had not continued to sort of restructure him in their very New Orleans Saints-y way, to the point that he is virtually uncuttable this year, I'm not entirely positive he would be a member of the New Orleans Saints in 2024. Like, he is not very good anymore, and is not adding a lot of value on the ground. But they're in a spot with his contract where they're paying him a ton of money, whether he's on the team or not on the team. I'm pretty sure that he's paying him more money if he wasn't on the team. And so long as he's on the team, he's still going to go out there and get touches. He's going to get receptions, and he's going to be a starting player in fantasy football. So I think it can matter to that extent, where you do get a little bit of protection and longevity. I think at quarterback, it matters especially because quarterback is very binary. You're either a starting quarterback or you're not a starting quarterback. So to me, like, looking at, not at the high end guys, but at these fringy guys. And if you want to look at who do I have a little bit more confidence in might be a starter for an extra year versus not, I don't think that's a bad thing to factor into consideration. I don't think it really matters that much with the high end players, because I brought up the example of a Kamara, right? If you've been holding the bag on Kamara since when he signed that extension, obviously his value has still gone down precipitously. Once you're at the point where your contract is the reason you still have a job, you're probably not going very highly in Dynasty startup drafts. So I really wouldn't factor it in massively at the top end. And I certainly wouldn't factor it in massively at wide receiver, because as we know, there's really more to wide receiver fantasy points than simply being on the field or having a job. If it goes, it goes. It doesn't matter how much they're paying you. Shout out to Kenny Golladay. So I think that is sort of how I feel about it. The maybe slight exceptions to this would be if someone is just in an especially outlier great spot. Maybe you're a little bit happier that they're staying where they are versus, maybe they don't sign it and they end up going somewhere else. Vice versa. I think if you're a Brandon Ayuk manager, you're rooting against the contract extension, right? I think if you're a Nico Collins manager, you're very happy he's going to be on the Houston Texans for a long time. If you're a Brandon Ayuk manager, I think you're hoping that he's no longer on the San Francisco 49ers, if I had to guess, or at least that's how I view it as a Brandon Ayuk manager.
Yep, I think it's fair. I think you're right. It kind of does depend on the player and the tier of player it is. Derek Brown says expecting contracts and players getting them is a bit different. It is, but I said this last week in my supposed accused straw man argument with Nico. If you believed that Nico was this top 12, top 13 talent heading into this year, and his situation hasn't changed, and his production is projected to be the same, then having him ahead in that ADP should have already kind of been in your plans. And then if you think he is that good, I would assume, like Ryan said during our conversation, he was anticipating an extension close to this already. So I think there is a way to kind of anticipate a contract if a player you believe so strongly to be in that top 11 to 13 range. Like if you have Ayuk in that range, I'm imagining you're expecting him to get an absolute bag at some point. Because you just think he's a really good player.
The thing with these guys is like it's really on the margins, right? Like it's like Brandon Ayuk. It's not like he's not going to be playing football in the NFL. It's just like the only thing we don't really know is we just don't know exactly how long he's going to be on the 49ers. And then if he's not on the 49ers, we don't know where else. So like it's not, if he signed a contract extension tomorrow, that's probably like the neutral option, right? Yeah. The best option is he goes and signs somewhere that's extraordinarily favorable, better than the 49ers. And certainly there are places out there that are worse than the 49ers. So you're sort of baking all that in. But just purely a contract extension, like I think that Collins, like, I guess the reason why I took some issue with the argument that happened last week is like the gap between how I value a player at wide receiver 12 or at wide receiver 18 is like almost it's just a very tight scale of guys already. Yep. Where like I'm looking at when I'm in a startup draft and there's like 5 of these guys, I'm kind of just like, okay, I guess I like this one the best. But if the person before me had took that guy and I had to take a different guy, it really wouldn't change my outlook all that much. So might I move Nico Collins up a little bit in my ranks because of this? Sure, it could be a tiebreaker where, okay, now I know for sure they're going to choose him he's going to be one of their guys that they're committing to long term. I think this sends a little bit of a signal that Diggs probably truly is a 1-year option for them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if Tank Dell also performs and looks like a guy they want to extend at some point. So it's a positive. Doesn't massively alter my view of him, but like maybe a couple of other guys that I would have seen him as like right on the fence with, maybe he moves the slightest bit ahead of them. But how much did that change in the context of the wider market in terms of how much he's worth, like overall in a trade? Like not much. I don't know. Maybe he's worth what? An early third more than he was before the contract, a late second, maybe something like that would be like the total effect. But that might be enough to move up 4 spots positionally because it's really tightly packed.
And I think for a reasonable person, that would be an acceptable train of thought. But look, I openly admitted that when Ryan and I discussed this, and Ryan, I'm going to pitch this to you right away here. When we discussed this, I directly stated that it was based off of some overreactions that I had seen from Sharp Dynasty players that I follow, which is where I got the argument to begin with. So Ryan, you had mentioned that you had already kind of expected this. How would you go about approaching players? And we don't just have to make it Nico. It can be Waddle. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr., Devonta Smith. There are so many wide receivers in this tier that got their extensions. It's kind of just leveling it out further to me. How are you approaching trades? Does it change it for you? And how do you look at extensions?
Yeah, so sticking on Nico for a second, I think what's important here, as you said, you said earlier on, oh, well, if you value him as a top 12 or top 13 type of talent, why should this change anything? I think with Nico specifically, the issue is I don't think most people that have Nico as a top 14 dynasty wide receiver would say, oh, yeah, he is very clearly, I'm very confident that he is a top 14 talent, and that's why I have him there.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of the reason why Nico Collins is valued where he is in Dynasty is, as Jacob said, because he is paired with CJ Stroud, and now that's for the foreseeable future. So
right.
Nico is a case where it's okay, I can be more certain that a lot of what's feeding his Dynasty value is going to continue at least a few years more. Therefore, sure, I think it makes sense to bump him up a little bit. He's still in the same tier for me. Then you take a guy like Waddle, who with Jalen Waddle before the extension, my take on him was basically, I think he's a really talented player. He kind of ran cold on a lot of the not stable stuff last year. He's still insane per route. All the things you look for. I am very confident in Jalen Waddle as a talent. He gets his extension. Yeah, that doesn't really change anything for me. It was kind of expected. It's nice, I guess, that we know he's going to remain in this system, but it's not something that materially changes my view on a Waddle. I didn't move him at all when the extension happened. So yeah, it definitely depends on the player, but more than anything, I think it's important to know whether an extension is affecting the source of that player's dynasty value. For Jalen Waddle, it's not really about, this is his situation and his landing spot. It's why we love him so much. It's if you're a believer in Jalen Waddle, the talent who can go out and command targets and make big plays, then that's why you have him valued where you do.
Love that. Does it change? I'll ask this question after. Lucas, I want to get the same thing from you when you're looking at these players. Does it change it for yourself when you're approaching it?
Not really. Like, I know it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of everything from a player signing a massive deal, but I think whenever I'm actually being rational and not in the excitement of it all, then it really doesn't change anything. Their situation doesn't change. It just means that they're going to be with that team for a little while longer. Maybe that makes you feel like you have more security tied up in it, but whenever they're going in the first 6 rounds and they're not a running back, there's already a lot of security already tied up in how they're being valued. I think that if you're looking a little bit further down the list, then maybe that'll start to influence a little bit more if the team comes out, signs somebody who isn't as highly valued in the community as you're expecting to a bigger deal saying, we value this player a lot. Just like whenever a rookie gets unexpected draft capital, that's a bigger signal to me than somebody that we already think is good is getting a contract extension for a lot of money.
So you're in on Rashad Bateman? Is that what I'm hearing now?
I'm always in on
him?
Rashard Bateman,
Yeah.
although I have traded him away a lot this offseason. So, yeah, I'm finally cashing out all those 201s, trading away for 2025 thirds.
Man.
Feel real good about myself.
Yeah, you know whose contract matters to me? Derek Carr. You know who cost $51 million against the cap to cut after this season? Derek Carr, right? Like that's a guy who is basically free in dynasty leagues. And I'm here to tell you that it's extraordinarily likely he is a starting quarterback for 2 more seasons. Like it just is. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants to hear it. But unless you think that the Saints are going to be abjectly awful this year, which I really don't think there's any reason to think that they'll be anything but their mid-average 8 and 9 selves, like they always are, then like I don't see them being in a position where they're like, we can get rid of Derek Carr. Maybe they can. Teams will do it, right? Like, it happened with Russell Wilson, where a team unshackled itself. It'll happen with other teams, but it's harder, right? Like it just is. Daniel Jones is another example where I don't know if Daniel Jones would be the Giants starting quarterback this year if he didn't sign that big extension. Maybe. I don't think so. I think if he had just played that year out, let's say they had done the 5th-year option, right? He plays last year on the 5th-year option, doesn't get extended. Feel like we're not sure where Daniel Jones is playing this year. But sometimes if a team is like, well, I don't really know what else we're going to do. We're already paying this guy a boatload of money. I guess he's still a starting quarterback. And that stuff matters a lot in Superflex. But all these wide receivers we're talking about are good. They were always going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And if there ever becomes a reason where like the only reason Nico Collins is a Texan is because of his contract, then the bet failed at that point. So.
Right. There's a couple of comments that I want to address because it's kind of going to move to my next point in this, where Derek Brown says this can be the difference maker for players in the same tier. What I find interesting is a lot of these guys getting extended, I have or did have in a flat tier. And as they were starting to get extensions, they were kind of, almost moving one rung up the ladder over the other. And now we're right back to square one because a lot of these guys have gotten their extensions. Like I mentioned, the Michael Pittman Jr.'s, the Jalen Waddles. We're waiting for T. Higgins, but sure enough, whether he gets extended or if he gets signed, like whatever his next contract, he's going to just rejoin the ranks of that same flat tier of wide receiver. Like you mentioned, right now he's kind of the, let's say the odd man out.
Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins situation doesn't bother me. Like I guess it depends on how you feel about the Cincinnati landing spot. I would characterize the Cincy position for him as probably like above average. Like I don't think it's like the world's greatest spot to be because you're competing with Jamar Chase. I think that there are places out there where T. Higgins could be better than what he is right now. I think there's probably more places where he could be worse than what he is right now. So, but like, I don't know. It is what it is. If you're getting T. Higgins, you're getting 1 year of him on the Bengals, most likely. And then you're trying to price in whatever you think is the aggregate of the other 31 teams, because that's where he's going to be next year. So I don't think it's a thing where like, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to just, when he signs, move him up. We'll see where he signs. If he signs somewhere good, then we'll move him up. And if he signs somewhere bad, then we'll move him down. And for now, we're going to try and average it the best that we can.
Yeah, 100%. There was, like you said, a difference maker for players in the same tier. And Spencer Adkins popped in and said Kirk is an example. And I agree. Christian Kirk's contract boosted him up above a lot of other scrubs within that tier. He's still woefully underpriced, mind you. So buy more Christian Kirk. But that's my next point that's going to lead me to, it's easy to say you don't move these guys up, but if someone comes knocking on your door, right? For me, if I know that I can, I'm going to upcharge them a little bit. Like I'm going to use the positive news in my favor. I think dynasty managers should do that. Does it change your approach for moving or tiering around these players for yourselves? And this time I'll start with Ryan.
I mean, yeah, when you're in a negotiation with another person, of course, you're going to spout off whatever positive point like that you can think of. It's kind of this weird game we play where if Thomas and I are negotiating for Nico Collins, then he's going to start talking about, oh, he just got the contract, when it almost at the same time, both of us understand that neither of the other cares or thinks that that's like a relevant point. But you're always going to do that in a dynasty trade negotiation regardless. I would just say when it comes to moving guys based on a contract, I think it's important to keep in mind that when these guys are signing these contracts, just in terms of at the point in their career, so if it's a really good wide receiver after year 3 or kind of later on, these aren't the times during the players' careers that they typically break out. We kind of know what all these players are. So I think that's something that is kind of being missed in this conversation, where we're not getting new information about only the player themselves. That's something we find out much earlier in their career. That's when we find out if they're going to get a new contract or not. We generally know ahead of time, just based on the performance on the field, the talent evaluation. And I guess I do want to also just jump back kind of on the T. Higgins point, where yes, I feel like we see this a lot with guys where we're kind of wish casting in terms of, oh, well, imagine if T. Higgins went to a different team where he didn't have to compete with Jamar Chase. And maybe at one point in like the history of the NFL, that was like a valid point. But honestly, now almost all of the teams with good quarterbacks that are going to support good fantasy wide receivers, almost all of them have multiple guys, right? It's very rare at this point that you have the high octane passing attack that is centered around only one wide receiver. And I think that's something teams are doing intentionally. I think they've realized, yes, it creates these increased gains to have multiple receivers under contract that are both on the field at the same time. It is a synergistic effect in terms of real football and what is happening on the field in terms of the offense scoring. So I don't think just in the future, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but that guy who you're saying, oh, well, maybe he's going to get to the end of his rookie contract, or maybe the like high target commanding veteran that is across from him is going to get traded away or whatever. That's not the natural way things seem to flow in the NFL anymore.
No, it's a good point. Jacob, I know what I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is going to be. Probably going to be something boring. Like,
I mean, if you're in a trade negotiation, oh my God, I can't believe I have Nico Collins. You want my Nico Collins? Oh, I can't move Nico Collins. He just signed a big contract. He's the best wide receiver in the world. I mean, obviously, come on. What are we doing?
I was fully expecting like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. Not boring. But no, you are right in terms of like, you should be obviously puffing your chest out for you. So if you're in a trade negotiation, I think Jacob just hit that on the head. Unless Lucas, you have something different to add to that, but I think you should be using these to your advantages. What you heard is 4 people well, I think it matters a little bit more than I think my 3 compadres here, but you just heard these 3 guys, Lucas, Jacob, and Ryan, all tell you that it doesn't matter. And at the same time, the second we ask the question, does it change how you trade players away? It's yes. So use what you have at your disposal. If that is a contract extension, use that. We said on the walkabout for years that you need to lie, cheat, and steal like Eddie Guerrero in every single trade negotiation. And it is right. Maybe on another program, we can touch on some how to tier sideways and kind of decide which ones you want to be in or out of. So awesome. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of the players that signed some extensions and how it's worked out for them previously, just because I think this is something kind of interesting to look at in terms of we see the extension and how does it actually affect production. I found this a a little interesting on the study. So quick break here, and we'll be right back with that. Okay, as much as this year has been a wide receiver haven for extensions, there were quite a few extensions in 2022 heading into 2023. Let's talk about those. I have the list because I'm a prepared professional for podcasting. So here is my list. Now, you guys can point out to me which ones you think are the most interesting, not interesting, whether or not they cared. One thing that I noticed was dollar figures. I found very interesting. The Stephon Diggs one, we obviously know how that turned out. The Tyreek Hill one, we know that. DJ Moore's 3 for 61 looks like a bargain. The Devontae Adams 5 for 140. Terry McLaurin's 3 for 68. I found it interesting that the numbers to me for these mid-tier contracts hasn't drastically gone up, but the high-end extensions have ballooned. I feel like these are kind of close to the Michael Pittman Jr. extension and Devonta Smith extension for this year. But Deebo Samuel signed 3 years 71, DK 3 years 72, Terry 3 for 68, Cooper Kupp 3 for 80, just as for some examples. And a lot of these point differentials now, obviously negative 9 points for Cooper Kupp. That was obviously after his God season, getting hurt, etc. That changed that. AJ Brown stayed exactly the same at a negative 0.5 points per game. AJ Brown was like, I'm going to take my money and I'm just going to fucking ball. And that's what he did. But I have seen Tyreek Hill's bumped up. DJ Moore's bumped up. Devontae Adams lost some because he's not playing with Aaron Rodgers anymore at that point. Terry McLaurin was about the same. DK the same. Deebo 3.1 in the plus for wide receivers. What this tells me is that teams are just paying for what they know they're going to get. To me, it doesn't seem like the production skyrockets. They're going to use them in a different way. They're being signed for what they are. One thing I do see a lot, they signed the extension. That means they're going to use him this way, and this way more. That is a part of the conversation that I see often, and I wanted to discuss it. I found the Njoku one kind of interesting because his production kind of stayed the same. Russell Wilson stayed the same, and then Kyler Murray, obviously he got hurt, and that was the reason he got absolutely nuked for his ADP at that time. But do you expect a difference in usage when these guys sign, or do you find them?
The answer to that question is mostly no. I want to get ahead of what I fear to be an inevitable takeaway from this list, which is people will be like, "Oh my God, why do they all go down after their contract extension?"
Well, there's some nuance to that, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean that would be like you couldn't design a better example question for a lecture on selection bias than this list, which is like, first of all, we just know once you're a veteran in the dynasty landscape, you're more likely to do worse than to do better. And in every successive year, that's universally true. That's especially universally true when we're talking about very good players. The only people who get contract extensions are very good players.
Right.
Players also are more likely to sign contract. Yeah, that's true.
Because Bateman did sign a contract extension this year. It blows my mind.
That is true. Or that is also, it's also true that most players are, again, Bateman being an exception to this, are more inclined, and the team is more inclined, both parties are more inclined to sign contract extensions after good seasons. If a player has a terrible season, either the team doesn't know if they're part of their plans or the player thinks, okay, now's not the best time for that leverage. Usually contract extensions are being signed in a place of harmony. In the case of some of these wide receiver extensions, I believe at least two of them, maybe more, were also coming right after trades. And so that's, there's potential confounding effects from a change in environment from that, all sorts of things. Just the point is once we're focusing the pool down to players who just played well enough to get a contract extension, the inevitable result is that all of those players statistically are more likely to have a worse season than the one they just had that earned them that contract extension. Yep. And it's not the contract extension itself that is causing that. It's just the natural effect of buying high, which is just usually what happens.
I think it's also very interesting with these wide receivers just in this year because of how crazy the 2022 offseason was. These are wide receivers that are all competing with each other for placement in ADP. And as Jacob was pointing out, like these are all the elite to very high end wide receiver ones, high end wide receiver twos, low end wide receiver ones. So the only thing that can change the way that we perceive them, because we're already expecting them to be good. It's tough whenever they're this far into the league to have a completely otherworldly season that brings their value up more. But the fun thing about these contract extensions is it has nothing to do, like obviously they were good on the field, so they got the extension, but the way that the ADP is looking at them has nothing to do with what their performance is on the field. And we have this free inject in value that we actually get to play around with. You brought up some of the other, situations that were happening with players being traded and then immediately signing extensions with their new teams. All of that has something to do with also like what their production is going to be and is a little bit more on top of them just getting extension. But across the board, there's pretty good correlation between player X signs extension. You have a nice little short bump immediately following or like in the month following that happening. And then, you get to live with that during the season. Obviously, usually their value goes down just a little bit because they're another year older and so on and so forth. But there is a nice trend in just that little inject in value that you're not going to get from any other action happening to the player other than like a big trade or something like that happening. Or you get a brand new quarterback that you weren't expecting to throw them the ball, especially for the wide receivers.
I think Thomas kind of unintentionally made the most important point here just when he was reading down the list. When he's saying like, oh, well, Devontae Adams, yeah, that was his fantasy points per game fell because he wasn't with Aaron Rodgers anymore. And oh, Cooper Kupp, yeah, he just had the big year and then he had the injury. If you can just look at all of these contract extensions and think back to the 2022 and the 2023 season and immediately pick out the reason out of your brain for why this player did or did not perform better or performed worse. And notice that not a single time did Thomas say when he was reading down that list, oh yeah, that was because he signed that contract and they decided to throw to him more after that. No, that it just isn't how it works. And the game of football is just more chaotic than that. There are so many other things that can happen during the course of a season that have a much higher impact on a player's value, whether that be an injury or a new quarterback or whatever it might be. So yeah, I really think when we are sitting here like in June and discussing this guy just got a contract extension, to some extent, this is content brain. We just need the thing to talk about because the contract extensions are the only thing that are really happening this time of year. So, but as Lucas points out, that does have a tangible effect on the dynasty value of that player, at least in where they're getting ranked, like on these aggregator sites or whatever, or in the ADP. Whether that is going to change your luck in actual trade negotiations might be a separate topic. But yeah, I think that kind of covers it, that there isn't a material fundamental change in any of these players, but maybe there is in their value and how you approach trading them.
Yeah, I love that. And a big part of what I have been talking about in the Fantasy Points Discord, which all you need is a free login from fantasypoints.com. All the Dynasty content in there and Dynasty channels in there are free to access. So hop in there and have these conversations with us. These are the times to do my favorite thing, and the thing that Ryan rolls his eyes at me for saying constantly, and it's to take advantage and acquire more liquid assets and tear down, baby, because these short-term boosts for these guys give you more. That window just cracks open, like Toronto Dave says. Contract season is a trade catalyst, and I agree.
I just want to find, like, I need a chain of Thomas Tipple tear down exchanges on busy streets across North America. where I just get to walk into an ATM. I get to type in my sleeper name, and I get to punch in whatever player we're talking about that day. Oh, I pressed gold buttons. Oh my God, look at this. I just got the same production in a second round pick. It would be great.
Yeah.
The world
machine
would
breaks.
be so great. The world would be so great if we could install these ATMs at nightclubs across North America.
Yeah, and then the ATM breaks when you punch in Sam Laporta because Tom has a completely opposite take on
That's
only
true.
that
Sam
player for
Laporta,
this.
you can't exchange Sam Laporta into the tear down machine.
No.
That's
Well,
Tom's
I can.
proprietary
I don't want
software.
to.
Tom's proprietary software has blocked Sam Laporta from being inserted.
Correct. It's the
You
code
get an
is not
error
in
message. You
there.
get an error message.
I have to get IT in there to tell me to turn my computer off and back on again, because Sam Laporta just doesn't show up anywhere in that coding.
Right.
I love getting bullied on my show. This is a great time. This is what I come here for. I come here for the people and to get bullied.
I love putting together like live on air. I realize, Thomas has been inconsistent on something. I need to speak up right now. That's just I just get a rush from that. Jacob's been trying
to do that for years. I am very open on the fact that I don't want to trade Laporta. That's where that whole thing comes down to. I just don't want to do it. But my biggest point is if you know your league well enough, which we talk about constantly on this program, and you know that those reactionary boys like you see on Twitter where Jacob says I build my strongman arguments, if you know they exist within your league, that's your advantage, right? And that's where contract season becomes a trade catalyst.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that I'm just going to package all that up so I have that audio. I can clip that audio, and when Ryan says that I contradict myself, I'm going to play that audio every single time. I'm prepped for this, Ryan. I've been doing this a long time with a lawyer. All right, I'm ready to defend this shit. We're ready to go. All right. Yeah. In summary, use the contract season to your advantage. I mean, you absolutely should be. This is a time in a kind of a slower part of Dynasty season, post rookie draft rush, to actually really put a lot of this to the test and go out and make some moves with these guys. Okay, Jacob, we got another game. It was a big hit. When we come back from our last little breaky break here, because we're going to go game straight into Discord questions and get out. I'm going to have you describe how this game is going to work to Lucas, Ryan, and myself. And we are going to have another phenomenal time getting absolutely hosed in this game. So sit tight.
Okay.
All right, Puff the Magic Dragon. Let's explain that.
All right, here's how it's going to work. So full disclosure, this was last week's game. I tried to do a game that fits within what we're talking about in a given week. I had fully intended to be on last week's show until I got called into a last minute hearing. So last week, the show, they were talking about veteran production. And so I decided to basically take probably the most popular part, I would say, of the first game, make it into a full-time thing, which is the Name That Player game. And we're doing 5 Name That Players. And because we were talking about old player production last week, the one unifying theme, so this can be a clue that applies to all 5 players.
All right.
All of these players had 1,000 yards or more from scrimmage at the age of 29 or later.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So these are all players who aged like a fine bottle of Merlot. The way this will work.
Wait. How recent? How recent?
Vaguely, all over the place.
Okay.
Like ever.
Okay.
I can tell you that at least one of them was, I believe, in the 2010s, and at least one of them was in the 1980s.
Okay. That's more what I was looking for. All right.
Yeah.
And just 1,000 yards from scrimmage.
1,000 yards. No, well, I'm going to give you more clues. So as we did this is the same game that we did with Derek Carr with Cam Akers, which is where I'm going to start, but I'm going to give a total of 5, or up to a total of 5 clues. If you get it after the first clue, you get 5 points. Second clue, 4 points. Third, 3, fourth, etc., down to 1 point. I do not make any promises not to arbitrarily double the amount of points to make it entertaining at any point in time. That's something that I reserve the right to do. I also reserve the right to triple the points. You never know what's going to happen with that. What I can also tell you is well, first of all, Brian Ford, yes, the chat's allowed to exist. Anyone can choose to type whatever they want in the chat. I will allow the chat to play along if you beat them. I will.
Well, Brian tied me last week, so
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, again, the one ruling, if people missed it is that if someone does not guess on a given round, so say Ryan guesses on the first clue and he's wrong, that means Ryan cannot guess again the next round until Tom and Lucas have guessed. But you can't hoard your guesses forever. You can't just be like, oh, I'm sitting out this whole round and Ryan never gets to guess again. You only get that for one round. So, without any further ado, our first player for our first clue, player 1. This player was selected 5th overall in the 2000 NFL draft.
Ryan, you're the new full-time member.
man.
You get to go first.
And remember, you guys can all pass if you want to pass it. If anyone wants to take a shot, 5th overall pick in the 2000 NFL draft.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass. We'll see what these guys think.
Trying to remember.
Yeah. I'm going to pass for now.
Oh, coward! Bunch of cowards.
Okay, we got a lot of cowardice here. A lot of
So
cowardice.
1,000 yards, 1,000 yards in the 2000 draft, or he got 1,000 yards after he's 29 and older and was drafted 5th.
Is it cheating to look at the chat? I should just move the chat.
I'll let you guys do whatever you want with the chat. All I'll say is that if you guys guess in the chat, I'm not going to say anything about your guesses. I'm not. You can say whatever you want. I'm not saying anything to verify.
Sam
But you
Laporta
guys
is my
can-
safe word, Derek.
You guys can take the chat's advice. The only thing I will ask is if you're in the chat and you want to play along, feel free. Please do not look up the answers. Please do not Google the answer and post in the chat. If you want to Google. If you want to post. No posting and Googling. Okay.
Yeah, if we see you go perfect scores, we know what's up. All right.
Yeah.
Although
Okay,
I'll still
3,
argue that Derek Brown cheated
2,
last time. I'll pass.
1. Okay, we're all
The other
passing.
two pass.
All right,
I'll
we're all
pass.
passing. Okay,
I just wanted to
second
call
clue.
Derek a cheater.
This player, second clue. This player was on a college national championship team, but he missed the championship game with an injury.
Oh man, that's gonna.
Lucas, hand up.
I'm going to guess. I have 2 players in mind. I'm going to guess.
Only guess one.
Willis McGahee.
That is incorrect.
Ooh, that's a good guess, though.
Does anyone else want to guess for 4 points? For 4 points. I'm gonna look up Willis McGahee. That is actually a good guess. That might have been really close on a lot of counts.
Yeah,
Willis
that's
McGahee was drafted he was a first round pick, but 3 years later. I do believe he had 1,000 yards at 29 or older. And I do believe that your other clue is correct. So pretty darn close.
Can I go in 2000? Man, this might be.
We're giving it a
gonna go
10-second warning
Andre
for guesses
Johnson.
here. That is incorrect. Ryan, you can either guess now or you get first guess guaranteed after the next clue.
Yeah, we're passing on this one. Yeah.
Oh, you play it
All
safe,
right.
McGee over here.
Okay, third guess. Okay. So first clue, 5th overall in the 2000 draft. On a college national championship and missed the game with injury. Third clue, this player played for only 2 NFL teams, but some fans might argue it's only one team.
Oh. Lucas is really mad because he knows it and he thinks I'm gonna get it, but I'm totally not.
What is that? Fans would argue it's only one team.
Derek just figured it out, I think. We've got an oh ha 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 in the chat. Ryan, I'm gonna give you a 10-second warning.
I don't know.
Here on a guess.
I'm gonna not embarrass myself. I have no idea.
Okay, it's open for anybody. You want to get a guess in? Lucas?
Is it Jamal Lewis?
It is Jamal Lewis. Yes, Jamal Lewis.
They took him
Member
fifth
of the
overall.
1998 Tennessee Volunteers, but he only played 4 games that season. He played for the Ravens. Then he played for the Browns, of course. You could
You're
argue.
all right. We do think he's a Raven only.
There we go.
That's
Good
that's
job.
Really
Luca,
good.
Derek was on the right track here. He said it had to be a Raven or a Brown. 3 points. This is the first time we've gotten one before the final clue. So I'll read out. The next clue would have been matching his draft position. Lewis was the 5th player in NFL history, or I would have said this player was the 5th player in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards.
Well, that would have made it
the
easier,
last
for
clue
sure.
would have been this player's final 1,000-yard season came in 2008 as a member of the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, those last
there
two
we
would have
go.
been clear. I did not know Jamal Lewis was 5th overall. That's crazy.
We
And they had
valued running
Priest
backs
Holmes
very
on that
differently at the
team.
time.
They had Priest
Valued running
Holmes
backs
on that
very
team.
differently at the
Yeah.
time.
Crazy. All right,
Yeah, you
next
had me
player.
thinking,
Let's go.
it must be a wide receiver, 5th overall. Wow.
That's what I was thinking. Like we're living with today's brain. All right, next player. Let's go.
Okay. All right. This player was drafted 13th overall out of the University of California, Berkeley.
Cal. Okay. Lucas gets first dibs. I imagine he's the winner of the last round.
Well, anybody wants to? I'll give it 10 seconds on this. Nobody guesses on the first clue. So I'm not gonna
13th.
waste much of time.
13th overall from Cal. You didn't give a year.
I did not give a year.
Okay, I'll pass.
After his playing career, this player has appeared on NFL coverage for CBS, Fox, and Amazon.
Coverage for Fox
Oh.
and Amazon. Who covers football for Amazon?
Amazon should narrow it down. I usually mute that broadcast.
From Cal, 13th overall. Who went to Cal? You're not going to give us a position, obviously. I'm gonna
I might
say-
at some point.
You might.
I can tell you the position if we get to the 5th clue. The position will be revealed in the 5th clue.
13th from Cal, who put up 1,000 yards that late in
Okay.
his career.
We're going to the
I'll
next-
go
we're going
Deshaun.
to the-
I'll go Deshaun Jackson.
That is incorrect. Anybody else? Okay.
That guy. That
This
dropped
player has
ball
the
to goal.
all-time record for
Son of a
most
bitch.
receptions at their position.
He has the all-time record for receptions at his position, and he went to Cal.
All-time NFL record, to be clear.
And all-time
Not a Cal
NFL. We should know that pretty easily.
All-time NFL leader for
I can't-
receptions at their position.
I'm not allowed to guess here, and they went
So,
to Cal.
I am going to lean on the chat here, but it does make sense. Let's say Tony Gonzalez.
That is correct. Lucas, 6 points. Tom,
Damn.
0.
I had no
Ryan,
idea he
0.
went to Cal though, but
Shout
the
out
rest
to
of
the
it
chat,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Shout
I
out
was
to
too
the
I was
chat.
too
Thank you,
embarrassed to
chat.
guess. I was too embarrassed to guess it because I'm like, oh, this will be funny
Yeah.
if the chat
It
completely
started to get
blows me
a
here.
whole lot easier.
As
Next
soon
clue
as
would
you
have been
said
in his final
position, I shouldn't have guessed.
Yeah,
God damn.
Next clue would have been in his final season at age 37. He compiled 859 yards from scrimmage. And the final clue would have really given it away. With 14 Pro Bowl appearances, he has more selections than any other tight end and the second most appearances of any player in NFL history.
He really
Tony
was
Gonzalez,
goated.
you're a goat. All right.
All right, let's go.
Third player. Lucas is at 6. Tom, you know what? Lucas is at 5. The chat's at 1. Thomas is at 0, and Ryan's at 0.
You know, I will take that. I'll take that.
There we go.
Depeche has 1.
Okay, this player holds the NFL record for most rushing yards in a single postseason.
Oh,
Can I
in
guess?
the single yeah.
Sure can. That's the game.
Marshawn Lynch.
Incorrect.
Oh, I
Staying with
thought
the
he was
Cal
gonna
theme.
give it
We're
to
staying
you.
with the Cal theme, apparently.
He has the most rushing yards in postseason history, not in one season total.
Wait, in
just
one
to be clear-
postseason?
To be clear, it's the most rushing yards in any one postseason.
Okay,
So it's
that's
not the
what I
most
thought. Okay.
postseason rushing yards total. It's the most in a single postseason.
In one postseason run, they have to be real goated. You did say someone was going to be in the 80s, and I'm wondering if this is what it is. Can I go with Eric Dickerson?
That is incorrect. Lucas, would you like to guess, or do you want first dibs after the next clue?
I'm going to say Thurman Thomas.
Incorrect.
that's
Okay,
good
everybody
too.
can
That's
guess
good
next
too.
round. Everybody can guess. This player shares a last name with a famous TV character who played the same position.
What are these clues, bro? Oh my god.
Played the same
TV
position
or
on
movie?
TV or like he played the same
TV
position in high
character
school.
and the TV character with the same last name played the same position as this player.
Okay.
Jesus. I got to think of like Friday Night Lights. Now I got to think of so many different. Oh my god.
5, 4.
I got nothing, brother. I got
3,
nothing.
2, 1. All right. This player
Oh,
had 375 rush attempts and 24 rushing touchdowns in his age 34 season. Imagine that in 2023.
what is it? Is it John Riggins?
That's correct. John Riggins, 3 points. 5, 3, 1.
I'm thinking
0.
Tim Riggins. I'm thinking Tim. I knew it
That
was going to
is
be Friday Night
Tim
Lights.
Riggins is the Friday Night Lights character. Played fullback. John Riggins technically played fullback.
I'm sitting here trying to think of like all the Friday Night Light characters in my head, and I finally got it. I couldn't remember the actual NFL player's name. That's the one from the 80s. We got it.
That is the one from the 80s. Yeah. Okay. Next player. It is 5, 3, 1 for the chat, and then
I'm not at
0.
zero, baby.
Derek is being a great chat member in that he is stating that he
tipping.
knows things and he's giving clues, but he's not actually ruining the answers. So shout out Derek. Appreciate it. Okay. Player number 4. This player is the first ever wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy and did so at the University of Notre Dame.
Who won the Heisman at Notre Dame? Come on, Devi guy. This is all you.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. One
he
sec.
botched it. Sorry,
I botched the clue.
Recount. I want to recount.
I botched the clue. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
Because no one ever
So
wins the Heisman from Notre Dame.
I'll put it this way. The Wikipedia page phrased this in a very confusing way. So I believe he was the first wide receiver to win the Heisman at Notre Dame, but it's not actually the first wide receiver to win the Heisman. But whatever. He played at Notre Dame and he won the Heisman.
Played at Notre Dame and won the Heisman. I'm already going to tell you I'm not going to guess. I can already tell you this because I don't know wide receivers that come out of Notre Dame, let alone that good.
Okay. Second
Lucas
clue.
looks like he's like searching for his
He's
soul.
thinking it over. Yeah.
4, 3.
No, we're good.
2,
We're good, baby.
1. All right. This player had 9 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons from 1993 through 2001.
1993 to 2001, 9 straight, and he went to Notre Dame. I'll pass. I'll pass on that. That's crazy.
Anybody? We're seeing shaking heads. All right, down to the next clue.
It's a audible, guys. This is a podcast still.
This player played all but 1 year of his career with the same team. However, that team changed cities while he played for them.
Okay.
Oh, what teams change cities?
That's just so. Is
93.
No, not Ravens. Browns. Colts. No, I don't know, man.
From 93 to 2001, he had 9 straight. And he played for 2 teams. But that one was a 1 year. This is brutal, dude.
All right.
Change teams. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing.
I got
I
nothing.
know nothing.
Seeing nothing. 4th clue. This player's last name is a color, though his team was more famous for a shade.
Tim Brown.
That's correct. 2 points.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. Did
all right,
not know he won the Heisman. That's crazy. Damn, I got that one fast.
That is 7 points for Tom. Sorry, no.
Oh, we're coming back.
That's incorrect. That's incorrect. Lucas was
Can
the
you
one at
get
5.
something right?
Lucas was the one at 5. That means it's 6 points for Tom. Wait, did you get that on the second clue or the?
Oh my
You got
god!
that on the fourth clue. So 5 for Tom, 5 for Lucas,
I'm
1 for the chat, 0 for Ryan.
just getting blue balls in this game like the whole
Okay.
time.
Okay, this is the last question, and it'll shock you to believe that there are double points. So Ryan has
Still
to
in
get
it.
this by the
Yeah.
third clue to be
Getting
able
the
to
pity
win.
points. We love it.
So if Ryan gets this on clue 3, he wins.
It was
If
an
the
asshole.
chat gets this on clue 3, they also potentially win. Or if neither of them get it by clue 3, it's just whichever one of Thomas or Lucas gets it, period. Okay, I would consider this the hardest player to get.
Oh, of course.
But depending on your knowledge of certain issues, maybe it's not. This player was drafted 3rd overall out of the University of Georgia.
3rd overall, University of Georgia. It's a bulldog.
I want to know what the certain issues are.
Is it Herschel Walker?
It is not Herschel Walker.
Okay, I'll pass now.
That would be a certain issue, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll pass.
That is a certain issue. not that issue. Not that serious of an issue. Okay. This player's first name denotes a piece of military technology. Or sorry, terminology. Military terminology.
Out of Georgia.
3rd overall out of Georgia denotes an item of military terminology.
And they had 1,000 scrimmage yards.
At age 29 or later. That's correct. Yeah.
Georgia. That is a damn good one, brother. I'm trying to think of any backs out of Georgia from that time period.
What is common like military terminology that could also be someone's name? This is more the angle I'm trying to like.
He does this, bro.
I didn't play enough
he
Call of
does
Duty as a kid.
10,
I guess.
He does this,
9,
bro. No, we're good.
8. I would say I'd say if you played Civ.
I
This
have
term
played
comes
a lot
up.
of Civ.
5,
Damn it.
4,
It's not Cam
3,
Akers this
I'm
time.
still not
2,
going to get it.
1.
No.
This player's third clue. Ryan has to get it on this clue to
Okay.
win. This player's 2 most productive rushing seasons came on either side of 2 years of no football due to an extremely major ankle injury. So he had his second most productive season, missed 2 years, and then he had his most productive season.
I'm
Might
still
be
thinking
reversed.
about Civ. I'm going to be totally honest.
Oh
So we
my
have a- we have
God.
That's the only
Term
thing
from
that
Civ
can save me right
name.
now.
A term from Civ is
Multiple-
his name. He was 3rd overall pick, played at Georgia, had 1,000 yards after 29, and he had 2 massive seasons with a 2-year injury in between.
You're absolutely diabolical, mate. You're diabolical with this.
I like heard that in an Australian accent, even though you didn't say it. Like, you're absolutely diabolical, mate. That was just
my
how I
God.
heard it.
That one's for you, Tom Lee. I got nothing.
All
From
right.
Georgia picked that
5.
high.
Come on, Ryan. Got a guess?
I-
We got a guess?
I can't
Throw a
think
Hail
of
You
Mary
got to
up
throw
there.
just any name out at
gotta
this
throw
point to have a
something out there.
chance.
I like Ryan Ford's guess in the chat. Colonel Sanders. Can the
Derek,
chat
you be
went off
quiet.
of that
buddy.
one?
You be quiet, Derek. All right. Okay. This player's ankle injury came on the back of him being named to the first cover athlete of a Madden game, thus spawning the term the Madden curse.
The first ever cover of Madden.
Oh, I get to
Yes.
Google now because I'm out. Sweet.
The first ever cover of Madden has got to be. Oh, I'm trying to think. You said out
Right?
of
If they don't
Georgia.
get it after the 5th clue, I will let you guess. I'll let you come on and guess, Trey.
First ever cover of Madden Curse. That's not Eddie George, is it?
It is not, although pretty darn close.
Oh.
I think he was like the next year or close to it.
Eddie George is what
Being-
Google says, and I got really confused about how that was a military term. So
Okay. See, I said David. I went Eddie George as well. That's got to be a pass. Let's go next.
Am I wrong? I mean, I'm definitely not wrong. This guy was the Madden cover and spawned the Madden curse term. If Eddie George was on a cover the year before him, I'm willing to concede that's possible.
Okay,
I can't confirm that right
let's go next. Lucas
I'll
doesn't
admit
got
that's
it.
possible. Okay, this player
So
played for 4 NFL teams, but his most productive and memorable years came on the San Francisco 49ers from 1997 through 2003.
Oh my God. Garrison Hurst.
That's correct. Garrison
All right.
Hurst.
Suck it, baby. Yes. Yes. Sweet, sensual victory.
I would like to protest that I had the guess.
Yeah,
I didn't know it, so it's fine. But still, I had the guess.
Yes, baby. Look at that. Garrison Hurst. Did not know he had that many significant ankle injuries. That's crazy what he did in his career. Also did not know he was the first Madden cover. That's insane.
Madden 99. Garrison Hurst.
Yeah, Google
Damn, and
thinks
Eddie
that
George
Madden started in 2000 apparently with John Madden on the cover, and then it was George in 01. So yeah, you had to very specifically type in Garrison Hurst to get that to come up. Google's destroyed, man.
That's crazy, bro. That's insane. Winner of the game. I'm never gonna let you forget it.
What is
phenomenal.
the military term? That's something that I'm trying to
Garrison.
figure out.
Garrison.
It's a garrison.
Garrison. Oh,
See, now
Got it.
Lucas is trying to
Got
hide
it.
some things now and
Got it.
play dumb here. All right.
If you pick oligarchy, which is the second tenant, I believe, in tradition in Civ 5, you don't have to pay upkeep costs on any unit garrisoned in a city.
Oh,
got it.
oh
Got it.
I love this show so much. Final break. When we come back, we have one Discord question that was asked today that I absolutely am in love with, and we are gonna take our shot at answering it. So sit tight. Last break, and we get out of here. Okay. Big question here. This is another strategy-based question from Hambus CA. He asked, would love to hear a discussion on the value of a player depending on the competitiveness of your team. For example, Derrick Henry has a different value for a rebuilding team versus a contending team. Keenan Allen is another example. Most rankings don't/can't provide that in a context. This is a very real problem where you take a look at the market and the market tells you you should be able to acquire a player for this, and you head over to your league and you offer somebody a late second for Derrick Henry, and they go, I can't sell him for that. He's going to be too productive. I need more than that. And you're trying to acquire, don't want to do that. You go, yeah, but the market says this. And the guy goes, yeah, well, fuck your market. How about that? Your market doesn't matter. How do we approach this? What's the difference maker? And at what point are you willing to pay more? How do you approach this?
First of all, shout out Jake. Fuck yeah, Celtics in 4. Let's go.
Enough with this. Enough with the Celtics talk. Fantasy football, baby. Let's talk about this. How do you fully decide what you are and are not going to pay for a vet? Because it can be confusing. Like he mentions, ranks and stuff don't cover this. It's a very nuanced type conversation. So Jacob, let's start to unpack this.
I'm going to give you my answer, and then I've got to run. But make sure everybody stick around to hear Lucas and Ryan's take on this too, and Tom's. For me, it's just about what is the value of this player on the specific team. So I actually was in a trade discussion with someone. I think Spence was in the chat earlier today. I was in a discussion with him on one of my teams where he was trying to offer me a group of kind of these veteran players. And he was like, I'm giving you a win based on your dynasty rankings, which, by the way, really annoying when I'm in a trade negotiation and someone's like, why are you asking for better value than what you list in your own rankings? It's very frustrating to be owned in that fashion. But anyway, in that team, my attitude was like, I'm already pretty short on picks. I have quarterback issues long term. Like I have Joe Burrow, which is great. My only other real starting quarterback is Derek Carr, which is not great. And I'm very strong at running back. I have like Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee and Kamara and more than I need. So from my perspective, it's like if I'm adding anything with my picks, like it's probably got to be either quarterback or maybe an impact wide receiver. So for me on that team, it's like if you want to trade me, in this case, it was like Mostert and Jalen Warren. If in this question, example, it's Derrick Henry, higher quality player, but the same thing applies where it's like Derrick Henry, if he's filling a position of need for me, I'll pay what I perceive as his value, which I don't know offhand. I think I have him ranked as a mid 2. And I would pay that, maybe even an early 2 if it was a massive need for me at that running back position. But I better be using up the maximum of his value because his value is purely what he's producing for you this year. So he needs to be replacing a replacement level starter in your lineup or worse for you to pay whatever you think his value is in a vacuum. If you're already strong at his position, if you're already a little bit overweight veterans, period, then I'm only willing to pay what I see as his value on my team replacement level option. But he's actually now coming in, he's pushing someone else who would otherwise start to the bench, who himself is productive. Then you're not really getting the full value of Derrick Henry and you're buying an expiring asset. So in that sense, he's only worth to me more like an early 3rd or a mid 3rd on that team because his, whatever you project points over replacement, 5, 6, 7, if my replacement level on my team is already a 14 point per game player, not a 12 point per game player, an 11 point per game player, that has his value to me. And his value has to be what it's going to be in production this year because he's a 30-year-old running back. So that's my answer is look at your team, figure out how much of the vacuum value of this player, which is their, productive value over replacement, can actually impact your squad. And if only a fraction of that can impact your squad, they should only be worth a fraction of their value to you in a vacuum.
Love that take. Love it. Jacob, I know you got to take off and get out of here. So I'm going to do
I love you guys.
Little swooshy things, and we'll see you next week.
I'll see you in a sec. And yeah, if you want, you can just leave my thing like blank so you don't have to ruin the whole.
I got you, baby. Don't worry. I got you.
Right.
We are professionals sometimes.
Have a good one, everybody. Congratulations to Tom for the big victory in today's game.
Yeah, we love that.
Tom won career victory and Derek won career victory now. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, it's true. There we go.
Okay,
someone from this show had to get on the board.
Feeling great.
Yeah, way to go, Buffalo Bills over there. All right, Jacob. We will see you on the next week.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's finish this thing off. Jacob obviously had a phenomenal statement for this, but I want to hear if anyone has anything different. Ryan, for yourself, how do you approach this personally? I personally find running back is the easiest position to do this with. Everything else becomes an absolute nightmare. How would you approach something like this?
Yeah, so I would echo everything Jacob said. All of that completely makes sense to me. I want to step back like one step in the process, though, from with Jacob's answer, that's you're in a negotiation. This is how I'm deciding that I value this player for my specific team. I would do that process almost a step earlier and look at the teams in my league and say, okay, where is each of these teams heading kind of broadly? Is this team a rebuilder or is this team a contender? What ought their goals be? And what does that mean in terms of, do the players on my roster that I want to sell, does their entire value apply to this specific team? And I find that this can save you just a lot of time in terms of negotiating trades rather than you're like mass sending out similar offers, or even if you're going to personally curate an offer if you're trying to sell a guy to every single team, you probably shouldn't waste your time trying to cater an offer to sell Derrick Henry to a rebuilder, right? So just understanding that instead of I'm looking for a specific player that I want to acquire for Derrick Henry, it should be I have a lot of players I'd be willing to take for Derrick Henry. Let me first identify the teams that will be most willing to give me Derrick Henry's maximum value to them in terms of how much that can apply to their starting lineup. So I think it's important to do it kind of beforehand, before you even get into any owner's DMs, and understand that certain teams are going to be interested in certain players that based on like the archetype and the type of asset they are versus other types of players. And what's really fun is when you completely judge another person's team entirely different than they do theirs, and then you start asking for picks. That's how that normally tends to go.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to be told that their team is ass, right? Like nobody wants that, but I'll say that. Well, I'll let Lucas go. Lucas, you go, and then I'll finish this off before we get out.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to get I think part of the crux of the question is yes, the state of your team greatly changes how you should be valuing these players, especially the Derrick Henrys, the Keenan Allens. Looking further down the list, the Chris Godwins this season. I don't know if we want to go as far as DeAndre Hopkins, but those range of players that whenever you're going for one of the top 3 picks in the draft, yeah, they're useless to you, and you're willing to get rid of them for whoever it takes just so they're not on your team, score you points, and going down in value. But if you are one of those teams, I am very interested in stocking the rest of my bench with those type of assets that are still looking to score points and are coming a little cheaper. So I agree with how Jacob's looking at it from here's a player who's going to be, 14 points per. Sorry. And then, yes, you would love for that to be on your roster, but I don't think that the fact that he might not immediately be a starter for you or is only maybe a 2-point per game better player than who you currently already have in the position, I don't think that should really factor into or prevent you from trying to make that deal if you're going out and trying to acquire them. Sure, you want to maintain future value on your team because whole thing with Dynasty, this is going to be your team next year. So yes, it's awesome to be able to win this season, but you still have to maintain that going forward. So you got to be a little careful with that. But I think the crux of it all is, yes, we're going to look at these differently. Be looking at how they will be impacting your team. You shouldn't just be adding assets willy-nilly. Have a plan with that, and then go out and execute.
I want to point out that you should only be attacking teams that would be looking to make these moves. Otherwise, you're just chasing a player to chase it. And a lot of times managers know this. There are times where there is a contender who will have a player, say like Derrick Henry, using the example that was given, and they are okay moving them, but they're going to absolutely want their max value because they're not incentivized to move them. Try to make offers for players that make sense for both sides. You will get more deals done that way. Do not look at it and say, well, my favorite dynasty analyst told me that I need to go and acquire this player now because the title of the video said acquire this player to win your league. However, if you're going out there to acquire that player to win your league and it's going to now cost you significantly more than what you should be paying just because someone had suggested it, it kind of defeats the purpose on buying low on these veterans. You want to be buying low on these veterans. If you are in a bunch of leagues, this becomes a lot easier because we talk about portfolio management quite a bit. It is a lot easier to just say, well, I'll take 10% of this veteran and then I'll protect myself and I'll go 12% from this one and I'll target like 8% of that one. Makes it a lot easier. But if you're in only a handful of leagues and you want to have maintained success, we've already said many times that there's no such thing as going all in. And I cannot wait to break out the data and study that I am putting together for this. But you don't want to be lobbed into that. Now, one thing Derek Brown in the chat had mentioned is, well, you're not taking injuries into account. Well, that is where you're just understanding that for the most part, we use this term a lot, that players just got to be okay dying on your roster. Right now, selling Devontae Adams is a nightmare scenario. If you're a mid-tier team or you're a contending team, selling Devontae Adams right now, you're not going to get in draft pick value what his production tells you should get. You get 140 targets this year. Yes, his production might dip overall, but the dude is still going to get 145, 150 targets. Getting that for like a mid to late second is not going to happen. So teams are not incentivized to move that player. However, there are some guys like Christian Kirk who seem to be just forever attainable on a contender, a mid-tier team, a tweener, or a rebuilder. They are always available. And you might have to pay that little bit more or even the same amount to get somewhat replaceable production. For me, this is where WAR really comes into effect. This is something that I look at a lot, value like production over one another. So there's a couple of different ways to go there, but for the most part, just target trades that make sense. Don't fear injuries. You have to be willing to accept that those might happen. And generally speaking, the grosser and cheaper the player, the happier I am to acquire, to fill in these gaps, especially in June. Right? In June, these are the riskiest players to go and acquire, but this is generally when they are the cheapest. So you're taking on a lot of risk with it. But that's generally how it is. You'll find the difference between teams that are actually in a position to move the players you want to the ones that aren't. Will make it a lot easier to go off of rankings, aggregating value sites, etc., and be able to help you piece that puzzle together a little bit earlier. That's the program.
I will throw in there just real quick. Whenever you are in the mode of trying to acquire players like this, getting these players as I throw into a slightly larger deal does seem to make things a little bit easier. It's really tough to swallow knowing that you're trading away a player who's going to produce, but is only, you can't predict when his last season's going to be that he's going to be producing. It could be this year, it could be next year, but regardless, you don't want them. It's really tough to swallow moving them for what's projected to be a mid to late second, like what you were saying with Devontae Adams. It's also very weird, even though I absolutely love Keon Coleman, that Keon Coleman's going one spot behind him in ADP, and that just seems wrong. So do look to try to incorporate them into a little bit bigger deal as a throw in. Maybe replace where you were going to ask for a third round pick in one of these with one of these players. That does make it easier for managers to swallow. As somebody who's always rebuilding, that is what I've learned. That's whenever I feel more comfortable moving those players.
Lucas, forever rebuilding. I think you're right. It's like, well, if you throw in this player, I'll send you back a third. And now you're ending up paying, relatively cheaper, like we mentioned. That's a very great point. Phenomenal program. We don't do a lot of strategy-based things, but I'm glad that we did today. Obviously, if you want more, look, we make the content that we get asked for because we are about our subscribers. So hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on X, head over to the YouTube channel, FantasyPoints, youtube.com/FantasyPoints, and hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment under the video when this is all over. Like I said, there will be links in the description. If you want podcasts, you'll have the links in there for you. Go and rate. If you want to see another video, guess what? I've already got one set up for you in the description. Just click on that. Leave a comment. Let us know what you guys want more. Remember, my family lives on Tim Hortons, Timbits, and coffee. And without your likes and subscribes and your comments, my family will not get our donut holes. And that, to me, is what is important here. On top of making content for all of you, of course. Remember that Dynasty is supposed to be fun. This is a fun game. If you're finding yourself getting just so burnt out, take a step back. Take a little bit of step back. And don't be afraid to make those trades, everybody. And of course, hop in the Discord. Let us know what trades are getting done. Remember that clear heads and full hearts can never lose your best days. Well, goddamn, they're always spent tilting. Good night, everybody.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.